Hey, everybody. Welcome. We're going to talk a little bit today about reentry and what happens after the short-term missions trip. I'm excited to be able to share with you a few things today that I think will really help you in your journey. So this little training is specifically today for my team that we just returned from the Middle East to a country that shall not be named. And I am just so excited about all that God has done in us and through us. But this training is for you, for anyone that's come back from a short-term trip or has engaged in a cross-cultural experience, and now you're returning back. So most of us have heard of the term culture shock. Very real, a lot of research on this topic and a lot of books you can get, trainings you can go through. That's really not what we're talking about today, although it is extremely similar. It's just that we're talking about what you would call a reverse culture shock. It's the feelings, the physical, spiritual, and emotional impact that we have on re-entering into our home culture. And this can just vary in a lot of different ways, as maybe you live in the US and you traveled abroad and you were there for a few weeks and then you came back, and there's a change in the way you're perceiving things from before you left, and you can't seem to get your head around it. The reason is you're a different person. You've experienced these different things, and now you can't take this new you and put it into an old life. And so you've got to develop some new things because you're not the same person anymore. And I truly believe that if we handle re-entry into our culture in a very intentional way, that we're going to see a lot of growth and God be able to really transform us, which is the point of a lot of this um, research and really taking time to re-enter into in a good way. The point is transformation. So yes, we've had a great experience. Our team had an amazing experience. But is that all it is? Is it something we say, man, that was a great trip? No, we want to be transformed. We want what God did through us and what we did on the field to change us in our day-to-day life today. We're not the same, and we've seen God move. We've experienced new things and met new people, and we're not the same. So we can't go back in the same way. You may have this worksheet. I know our team does. If I've given it to you, it's called the Reentry What's Next sheet. And so I'm going to put it up here on the screen so you can see it right there at the top. For many people, the hardest part of a missions trip actually begins when they arrive back home. Now, why would that be? Why would that be the hardest part? And a lot of times we experience very real symptoms. So mentally, we have a brain fog. Sometimes when you come back, there can be physical things like actual fatigue that just doesn't make sense. And it might be a time zone thing, or it may just be an adrenaline thing because you were running very hard with a schedule that was demanding. Or spiritually, there can be a sense of just maybe you're not connecting with God like you were, and you're not hearing his voice. And sometimes you feel even like, what was that? That was a mistake, or I'm out of God's will. You can feel extreme confusion and depression and spiritually after a missions trip. Emotionally, you can feel that depression just in a sense of all these people you have been with 24/7 are no longer there. You're just alone in your apartment or your dorm room or your home, going back to work, doing things like this never happened. And it can feel like you're having almost a downer, like everything that you were just on this high, and now suddenly it's gone. And it takes time to work through those emotions, those physical things, those mental things, and those spiritual things. That's why coming back from a trip sometimes is harder than the trip itself as you try to integrate back in. So we want to talk about how do we do that? So let's take a look at this worksheet. Number one, the best way to re-enter is to prepare before you leave. Two things I want you to prepare. Number one is a prayer team, somebody that's praying for you while you're on the field. And then I also want you to prepare a debrief person. This is somebody who is going to listen to your stories. They're going to give you a space and a listening ear for you to walk them through the things that you experienced. And this is somebody that really cares about you and understands this is an intentional exercise here. Now, I started my missions journey many, many years ago, and I actually worked for an organization that took teams on missions trips that were short term as well as long term. But I focused a lot on the short term for many years. And so when I first started, I went on my own first international trip. And when I came back, I remember sitting with my family, and I was so full and so overwhelmed with everything I had experienced. And the pictures that I had taken on an actual film camera had been developed, and I couldn't wait to show them. And as we gathered around, I had everyone's attention for about 5 minutes. And then it just started to go down from there. People started to get a little antsy. Somebody got up to get a drink. And before I know it, after 10, 15 minutes, I can tell they're just not getting how powerful this was and how meaningful this was to me. And one of the things we have to understand when we go and come back, we're no longer the same, but everybody else is. And we can't expect them to understand what God has done in us or spoken to us. We can't expect them to grasp the gravity of the whole thing. It's just too much to expect and too big a burden to put on our friends and family. They're just not going to be able to do it. And that's okay. We know they love us, and we know that they are interested in us, and we know they want to hear our stories, but we have to give it to them in bite-sized morsels that they can handle. Okay. But if we prepare right, then we got this person that we can go over with this ahead of time and say, look, I'm going to show you a bunch of pictures, and I'm going to tell you a bunch of stories, and I just need you to listen, and I'll buy your coffee, and you're going to watch my pictures and listen to my stories. Right. And they're going to say, yes, I'm going to do this for you. And they're that special person that you're going to be intentional about it with. So those are two things to do before you leave. Going over the 8 great questions is something more advanced that I can go over with you at another time. But for this, let's just stick with these 3 statements here. Number 2, while on the field, you need to limit yourself in your connections and your expectations. And what I mean by that is when we get to the mission field, we have this tendency that we want everybody we meet to be our new best friend. We want to build those relationships, and our expectation is that they're going to continue. And so we say things and sometimes make promises to people that we're with on the field only for a few weeks or maybe a month at a time. And the reality is that relationship was formed in a special bubble, and it may or may not have merit to be a long-term relationship, but it feels like one. And we have to back up now, and we have to say, I'm not going to treat all of these as if they're going to be long-term relationships. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to be a good host. I'm going to be a good friend. I'm going to be someone that wants to pour into those that I meet. But I'm going to go for 1 or 2 relationships, and probably more with the leaders than anyone else, that I might actually be interested in continuing. And just being honest with yourself in that way is really key, because you put a lot of pressure on yourself to be everything to everybody, and it just doesn't work. And that's where some of that guilt and depression and just that emotional burden comes in reentry. One or two people. Letter B, think about the 8 great questions. Again, that's in a more advanced class. And then C, journal. When you're on the field, it's really, really important. Actually, just by chance, I had my journal for the Pakistan. Oh, I said it. For our Middle East trip. Here we go. I have my little journal here. And in the journal, I don't write long. I write tiny, and I just write a little bit every day, kind of what we did, what was said, what I felt like God was saying, and those kinds of things. And I just do the best I can. Now, I have a little parentheses here that says, guys, you need to also write, because for us guys, sometimes it's a little harder to put things into words and write it down. But I encourage you, even if it's just 5 minutes before you fall asleep, write some things down from that day. And it's important because you're going to be going over them later. Okay, number 3, when you return, prepare yourself for a downer. Just physiologically, your adrenaline is going to need to regulate itself, and you will come down off of a high. So you've been running hard in a schedule that isn't really made for long-term living. It's more of a schedule for, maximum impact in a short amount of time. You're getting up early, and you're getting your breakfast, and then you're going out and ministering or preparing your ministry. And then you're spending the whole day, getting things ready for ministry, doing services or vacation Bible schools, or whatever it is. You're working with your hands, even just physical labor, but you're pushing your body really hard. And your body, if you've taken care of it, will respond well, and you'll find yourself with energy. You'll find your immune system kick up with new bacteria and virus and things it's not used to. You'll find your body just respond well. And then when you get home, a healthy body is going to turn things down, and you are going to feel it. What you have to do is be conscious that this is normal, and not take it as in it's a demonic attack, or you're not serious about this enough anymore, like you were when you were so energetic. You have to be ready for that downer physiologically. Spiritually, also, you're going to have a downer. You're going to not feel the same intensity that you did. And that's totally okay. It's totally okay. It doesn't mean that you're not as spiritual or connected to the Lord or connected to your calling. Doesn't mean any of that. It's a feeling, okay? And the feelings come and the feelings go. On reentry, a lot of times you will have downers for those two things. B, fight the old mold. And what I mean by this is, when you come back from a trip, you're no longer the same. So don't try to fit yourself into ruts that the old you made. And I encourage you to take one thing that you can from the trip, and apply it to your life, to create a new life. And for me, one of the things that I like to put into my life, a lot of times I've made a new relationship. I've started journaling. I tried praying in the evening, not just the morning. I've mixed some things up, eating differently, just adding little thing to my life. Nothing huge, but just something to demonstrate that I'm bringing something new to my old life. So fight the old mold. Don't just slip back into the way things were. You're not going to want to talk the same way. You're not going to maybe want to hang out with the same people. You're not going to want to listen to the same music. There's just something that's going to change in you a little bit. Letter C, send sponsors pictures and thank you notes immediately. It's important to go through that process of thanking and encouraging those who sent you, not just because you want to build a team for future ministry that God is going to call you into, but that you're processing this with your team and you're allowing them in on this journey with you and you're thanking them. D, be a catalyst and not a critic. One of the biggest issues I've had with students over the years, or adults when I take them on trips, is whenever we come back, I get a lot of criticism from them about their home churches, about their family, about the ministries that they're involved in, because they remember what it was like on the field, and this isn't like that. The worship isn't as spontaneous. You know, the leadership isn't as serious about the call of, you know, whatever it is, they feel critical about their church at home. And so what I encourage people to do is say, don't be a critic, be a catalyst. If you want to see more spontaneous worship, volunteer for the worship team. Encourage your worship pastor. Take them to lunch and tell them all about your experience. Get them fired up about it. But don't have expectations for everybody to change because you had an experience. Okay? Everybody in your church, everybody around you is on their own journey with God. And God is moving in their lives just like he did yours on this trip. And he is moving us together towards him. And so be a catalyst for that. Encourage the people in your church. Cheer on your pastors and leaders. And if you are the pastor and leader, embrace what God has done in your ministry. Don't come back with a sense of guilt or shame or criticism over what you've built or over yourself. Know that God has been moving in you, and these new feelings or new ideas, they're fresh revelation, and God will implement those things with you as time goes on. E, make a daily commitment to process. Now, I'm almost done with this little short class, but I want you to take at least an hour a day, and I want you to commit to this. I used to make everybody on my team vow that for 2 weeks after we get back, you're going to take an hour a day to process. Everybody wants the transformation. Nobody wants to do the work. And it just doesn't work like that. You have to do the work if you want to see transformation in your life. Otherwise, this whole trip was just a wonderful experience. But we want transformation. And to get that, you're going to have to make a daily commitment to process. Now, to do that processing, that's where we get into the 8 great questions. That's where we get into some questions that you can ask the Lord as you go back through your journal and as you're reading through, and you can ask the Lord, why did I feel that way when this happened? Or how come I'm so angry about the economy here after being there? Or whatever is going on in your mind, take the time to process. And then last, make a 3-degree change. Make a change that's significant, but it doesn't have to be a change that's so big it just upsets your whole life. Don't move to Africa, okay? Now you're hearing a missions pastor say that. After one short-term trip, I don't think you should move to Africa yet. An extreme case maybe, but for the most part, we all want to move to the place we just came from. We all want to, plan the next 3 years, the trips there. We all, I tell you, every time I could either bring all the kids home with me or go live there when I'm done. I'm seriously contemplating, how can I sell my house this week? But I'm telling you, 3-degree change, because a large vessel doesn't just do a 180 or a 90-degree or a 180-degree turn without damage. It has to make little degree turns in order for that vessel to get on a new trajectory. You can't just whip it around or things break. And so in your life, it's the same way. 3-degree changes are the ones that you can maintain. You can try to do the big changes, but I have seen very, very few people stick with it. You can try to make a bunch of changes, but they don't last. I'm speaking to you from personal experience and what I've seen through coaching and pastoring over the years. Just pick one thing and make it manageable. and just try to do it for a few weeks. It may be getting up earlier and just worshiping. I think worshiping was one of them that I implemented this past year after being in an environment where the people spend a lot of time in worship. And it just really ministered to my soul. And I realized I'm kind of missing some of that. And so I integrated that a little bit more, where I would just let myself be quiet and have the music on and just listen and just almost giving the Lord adoration in my silence, just instead of just talking the whole time. And so little change, but it's something that God is doing in us to help us transform and become that better, more mature version of who he's calling us up to be. So last thing here, I'm going to encourage you. Be an advocate, be informed, be an intercessor, be a giver, be supportive, be part of a missions board, or be a recruiter to get more people to go back. There's lots of ways to stay involved in missions. Get back on a trip. If you're interested in the 8 great questions, they're very simple. I show you here on this worksheet. They are all about your basic belief structure. Who am I? The 8 great questions go into your theology, your identity, your walk with the Lord, and you simply answer them. And then while you're on the field, you allow God to take time to minister to you on these questions. They give you a framework to hang this whole big experience that you're on, because you're going to be experiencing a lot. That's a whole nother training, but I would just wanted to show them to you so you could freeze them. I hope this has been meaningful to you. I hope it's a blessing. I can tell you this, you're not the same. After you've gone on a trip, you are ruined to the ordinary. And there's a lot of research and a lot of great writing that has talked about travel and how travel just in and of itself, experiencing other cultures, experiencing God's beautiful people and creation that you have never gotten to see before, it changes you. And so I know you're new. I know you're different. And no matter what you're feeling right now, if you're just getting back from a trip, just know, get back into your rhythm, spend some time with the Lord. It will pass. You will connect with him. Make a little change. Make a little change here or there. Allow yourself grace to rest. Let your body rest. Plan on it. Plan on taking naps. Plan on eating some really wholesome, good food, and just enjoying your family, enjoying your time with the Lord. I hope this has been helpful. Bless you. Have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you on the field soon.